The International Festival of Thoughts and Ideas Kerala 2018 is being held from 27th November to 1st December. The purpose of this important conclave, where major intellectuals, chiefly of a leftist political orientation, gather, is to discuss issues that affect not only the country where it is being held, but the whole world, which seems to be veering towards the right. For some time, we have been watching the growth of the right wing and its exploitative and manipulative politics across countries. It has become extremely necessary for all of us to discuss the issues that confront the humans today, which are in fact issues of the survival of the race itself, because they include issues of exploitation, of injustice, of the uncontrolled growth of capitalism, worsening condition of the laborers across the world, the environmental degradation which is continually going unchecked, the state of women, the state of Dalits and Adivasis and similar other oppressed and subaltern sections of the people. We intend to discuss most of these issues threadbare in the 5 days when the conclave is being held in Trivandrum in Kerala. We expect some of the best minds in India and abroad to take part in these deliberations. We would also be looking at the state of Marxism today, which has a particular relevance this year because we are celebrating the 200th birth anniversary of Karl Marx. The need for a revision in Marxism, if at all, the various kinds of Marxisms that have come up after the life and death of Marx, the new perceptions of Marx and his own writings that have come up in the post-Marx age, right from the thoughts of Antonio Gramsci up to those of Hobsbawm and Althusser and Negri and Hart and quite a few other thinkers who in very different ways have tried to look at Marx and revive Marx and make his thoughts relevant to social revolution in our time. Because there have been issues in Marx which have been under-discussed, especially issues concerning gender and concerning environment, which are coming up in a big way in the discussions on Marxism in our own time. And again, there are attempts to go back to early Marx for fresh insights which have not been properly assessed and used. There are attempts also to discover a late Marx, especially as reflected in his New York Tribune articles, in the revised version of the first volume of the Capital, the French version, and some of his last writings and what he intended to write, for which he wrote some notes which have been gathered under the common title The Grundrisse. Perhaps we need to look at Marx comprehensively, not necessarily in this fashion, that is chronological order of an early Marx, a middle Marx and a late Marx, but rather as a compendium of ideas which were meant to revolutionize the world, which were meant to usher in a new age of social equality, of justice, a more humane world where exploitation of every kind, patriarchal, capitalist and caste-based, should come to an end. And all those ideas that Marx had about philosophy, which to him meant not necessarily only interpreting the world, but changing the world. So can we think of a Marxism as a thought system that can be used today to bring about the kind of change that we have always dreamt of, or the mankind has always dreamt of? And if so, what are going to be the issues that we necessarily confront? We will have to look at, for example, the changes of the idea of the capital and of capitalism that have come about in the 21st century, the globalisation of capital, the growth of corporate capitalism and crony capitalism. We will have to look at the new challenges to the establishment of a more egalitarian world, the challenges like those of caste and of race and of gender. We will have to look at the problematic of the revolution itself from fresh perspectives, learning proper lessons from the various successes and failures of the revolutions that went by in the 20th century and early 21st century. Look at the turn of events which have taken place after the Russian Revolution and also the Chinese Revolution in China. The meaning of certain other changes like the Cultural Revolution that happened in China, which has been interpreted at various levels by various thinkers, and the popular protests that have come up around the world from workers and women and people with different sexual orientations, various kinds of new classes or sections and groups which have been emerging with a revolutionary potential in the last few decades. So how do we look at them? How do we look even at the disorganized modes of change and revolution that have come up in the 21st century particularly? How do we bring them under some kind of a disciplined idea of social change and make use of them in the sense not of manipulating them, but actually making proper use of them in the creation of a new society and a new world? These again are some of the difficult questions that we who dream of equality, who dream of a different world, confront today. I believe that this conclave is going to help us think of these issues in new directions, certainly with the help of various streams of thought that have come up in the post-Marx era, assess those thoughts and also find what exactly are the ideas that are practical and applicable to the conditions obtaining in India and elsewhere in the world. And so how do we confront these right-wing regimes? How do we meet the challenge of authoritarianism and the challenge of new forms of what can to some extent be called fascism, which are coming up around the world these days? What are the strategies we are going to employ to fight these trends? How can we redefine the idea of democracy? How can we retain the idea of plurality as an essential element of any idea of democracy? How can we look at the idea of the republic as a system where the decisions are ultimately taken by the people directly, where the role of the state is controlled and curtailed and reduced to the minimum, where the people in the real sense are supreme, and where the invisible is made visible and the inaudible is made audible, and where the nameless get names, and where democracy becomes a reality and not merely a kind of formality as it seems to have been reduced to in many countries, including, I am afraid, India today. So these are perhaps some of the questions that we will discuss in these 5 days of the important conference, and I hope that this will be a major contribution to left thinking, revolutionary thinking across the world.